Okay. Any questions so far? So for this project, okay, so it's going to be a web service application project. Not a mobile, not a game. You could have a mobile client, but you must have a web UI, web interface. You must have servers. You must have databases. Okay. Since I showed you the AI is a lot more powerful than before, so I'm gonna have some more expectation on the complexity of the project. So we'll talk more that one shortly. But one thing I didn't mention last time was that I really hope that you could use this project as a way to enrich your resume. Okay, because think about for the resume, there is one very important section called the language and skills. Okay, I haven't looked at your resumes, uh, but from what I saw before, some of you only put Java, Python, C++ there. That's the only thing you have. Or some of you actually mentioned, I know Windows, I know Mac OS, maybe I know Linux. And I also sometimes see some students actually put, I know Microsoft Office, I know Word, PowerPoint. Okay, you might see these things from other students from other majors, but for CS major, you really should not put Microsoft Office. I also don't suggest you put operating systems. There's nothing really special. It's just operating system. You really want to put enough terms. And also, I can tell you, if you just put two or three languages there, it's not going to be enough because for CS major, for sure, you're going to know one of these languages. And then if you look at a professional's resume, if you look at the students who maybe, has a just better version, you can see they put 10, 20, 30 different items there. Okay. There's no magic on how do you get those. You just need to pick it up, try a little bit, and then write it down. But all I'm trying to tell you is that you don't need to be an expert in order to write those terms. If you see someone wrote React.js, it doesn't mean that you have to must have 3 or 5 years experience. No, if you do one project, you check in one code, you make one feature change, you can say that I know React.js. If people asking you, you just be very honest. Okay, I did this one in my software engineering project. We work together as a team to build this web application. My friend then is, or our friend then we use React.js. Well, I was involved in this X feature, Y feature, and it was pretty good. Okay, so hopefully that project will give you a lot of things to write about. Okay, so that's also the goal I forgot to mention. After this semester, after you finish your project, uh, we will be able to let you to enrich your resume a lot more. Okay, so anyway, so get your team ready. Now, this week, I want to, before we talk about any technical things, I want to lay out this topic first so that you guys can start to think about what kind of project to build because I do want you to start your project as early as you can. Okay. Even though I do require it's a web service or web application project, but I'm very open in terms of ideas, in terms of topics. And again, it's you guys to decide what you want to do. You never need to come back to check with me if this is okay. It's always fun, as long as you're following some of the principles and lessons I shared from today. Okay. For those of you who have done the mobile development course with me, whether it's online version, it's in-person version, you probably seen this a little bit, okay, but I'll try to give a little bit more complete version for this, okay? And also I want everyone to pay attention since you guys are still here, and this is week two. As you can see, we have about, 10, 7, 8 empty seats. Last time there was maybe 7 students standing there, okay? So while you're still here, I appreciate it. I won't waste your time. Please pay a little bit attention to the lecture today. Okay, I'll make sure that this one lecture will probably be very significant, can make a pretty big impact for you, not just for this course, but also for your near future in your career, especially one day you're gonna do your startups. Okay, please pay a little bit attention. I just want to share examples, stories, nothing really boring, nothing technical. Okay. So while you are still here, let's look at this together. So all I'm trying to share is that as we're trying to make a project, okay, how do we decide what we're going to work on? And how do we know this is a good project idea? Or once I have the idea, settled in terms of features, in terms of scopes, in terms of requirements. What should we do? Now, this part of the topic is very related with a traditional software engineering topic, which is called requirements analysis, or we call it requirements engineering. Basically, we had this subfield or subject that just teaches you how do you collect requirements, how do you document requirements. And this part is so important in software development process. Okay. A lot of you probably seen this type of image. They have different versions. This is one version I think is a little bit more complete. Okay. We'll go through this together. Very interesting. And the first one talks about how the customer describe a system, what they want. And then after that, how the project leaders understood it. Okay. Now, I don't know how much you can understand why they draw like this. The project leader, obviously, the way they understand the project is a lot simpler, right? So I have these three levels, but you also only understand as one level. It's not because the project leaders are not smart. That's how the project leader is supposed to be. Because what the project leader need to communicate with the customers is that no problem, we can do it. And whatever customers are requesting, yes, we can do it. It's not hard for us. We're very technical. We're very talented. And also the project leader will also convince the development team that, come on, we're able to deliver this. Okay, it's not really that difficult. So they tend to simplify things to agree on most of the things. All right, so that's kind of the need from the project leader's role, which is also reasonable, but that actually creates a lot of problems. And then after that, you see how the engineer design it. We do a very fancy version, okay, because we're technical people. We like to engineer stuff, and then in many cases, we actually over engineer things. Okay, we do things not necessary. So we design it, but the way we actually write it, obviously, is another version. Programmers, there are different levels, different experiences, and especially when you work together, that causes a lot of issues. Sometimes you just cannot deliver the way as you designed it to be. So you got a very, bad version. It doesn't work at all with all the bugs. However, that doesn't affect how the sales guys describe your project. They will still show your service, your software, your product is very luxury. It works really well so that they can charge a lot, right? And in terms of documentation on the left corner, we don't like to write documentation. So normally it's not well documented. And how the operations are installed. So the operations, we'll also talk about that one in the midterm. Like you have a project set up, for example, you have a server running, you have a backend running. Now you need to perform a lot of daily operation to maintain the server, collect logs, check the machines to see, make sure everything is working all right. How do you enable the deployment? How do you update the new version? How do you update some of the new software there, library stuff? All of this is called operations. And as the software engineers, we like writing code, we like digging into the algorithms, but most engineers don't like to touch the operations because it just doesn't sound like something very valuable and not that technical. It's just a very basic work, right? So it's not very handled very well. But once again, the customers are still going to pay for it. That's the nice part about the software industry. And help desk, nothing. The best example is Google. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to contact Google customer service. There's no way you can talk to anyone from Google. Okay, so very difficult. And then finally, this one is also very interesting. This one said what the customers really needed. Okay, so this one happened at the end. After all this whole process, we got all the things to develop, all the things done, and they started paying it. And the customer all of a sudden realized, well, I actually need something like this. Um, so the image looks very funny, but it's a very true reflection on what's going on in the software industry. And that also shows us why you need to learn software engineering. Remember, I told you the goal for learning software engineering is to make sure that you're delivering the software on time, within my budget, satisfy requirements, no bug, all of this. Okay, so obviously, different images there it talks about different issues, but here I want you to understand there are two critical issues here. Is that one is the customer describes something and it's very often that we deliver something that's not what they asked for. Whether it's becomes the leader's issue or becomes the development team issue, or whatever, that always happens. Okay. And then secondly, the more serious issue you can see here is the last one. Okay. is that the customer, many cases, they don't even know what they want to do, or they don't know how to describe it in the right way. Or not only until they see some kind of version, they again, it's very difficult for them to tell you what they want. And I think this problem is even bigger because even though you got a right leader, right type team, you got everything built up, and then they told you, no, sorry, this I gotta go this way. You don't want to hear that. Okay. So these two issues are very related with requirements. Okay, because whenever this thing goes wrong, you can see there are a lot of risks. You might spend years on the project, paid all the developers, and then it's not what they want. What are they gonna do? You can say, well, I finished my job, you got to pay me more so that I can make changes. Well, I'll tell you, in reality, you probably don't want to say that easily because that's going to piss off your customers. A lot of the time, customers are not going to pay you all the fees all at once. They normally will give you some kind of installation. Okay, so you pay 30% upfront, you deliver one version, another 30%, and then wait for another 3 months until they satisfy everything, you give the final 30%. That's how it works. So you don't want to easily go there, it's gonna ask more, unless you have a special relationship, right? But if you're gonna keep making the changes, and then day two, day three, they're gonna ask you more and more how you're gonna deal with it. So very tricky situation to handle in software engineering. None of these are related with coding. It's all about all these non-technical things. That's why the software engineering is so important. Okay, but today we're not gonna talk about the middle steps. I want to focus more on the requirements part. Okay, features. What are we gonna do? How do we decide those? All right. So that's why I told you we used to have this field called requirements engineering. It's a very big domain that researchers are developing and researching different ways for you to manage the requirements. And there are a lot of conferences, books talk about this one. A lot of schools actually do have a dedicated course just on requirements engineering. But this one is not very common anymore. I'll explain why in the future. People use different approaches. But in the past, I would say 15 years ago, when I was still in school or when we did some of the internship, a lot of companies are still following very formal requirement analysis approach. So you will see people use very formal tools like they draw the diagrams to describe the feature because sometimes people feel the language is not very accurate, right? So you need a diagram to capture the key feature you want to build. That was very common. And people use some of the very intelligent tools to automatically extract some of the requirements from the documentation. At that time, there was no large language model. This was all done by manual document, and then they designed an algorithm to extract the words and then put together some of the features, a list like this. Okay, you see those kind of tools because people know that requirements are pretty hard to handle. It sounds like a very easy thing, doesn't involve any coding, but because our communication, our understanding always has a little bit of gaps. So it's very hard to get 100% correct on this. And then we also know that if you mess up any one of this, it's going to trigger a lot of waste later on along the line. Okay, so, but these are what people do before. And also, a lot of those tools, it came from like academia, like researchers are designing these type of things. So I learned a lot of those actually in my grad school, in my undergrads. But since I started to work in the real industry, my first internship was in Siemens. That was a little bit of research. I didn't touch too much development. And then after that, I did an internship in Amazon. That was the first time I joined a professional development setting with a professional team. All of a sudden, I realized that inside Amazon, they don't do any of this, and they don't do any this formal requirements engineering. They do a lot of things very simple, very informally. That's how I realized that on the practical side, there are a lot of changes, and obviously there's also kind of a change of the trend that people are doing things differently. But even like 15 years ago in the actual practice, people focus on very practical aspects. They don't write a lot of documentation. They try to figure out the most important part. To summarize what companies are doing at that time, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing, is that they're trying their best to collect the requirements directly from their customers. For example, Amazon, every team, they have some kind of product manager. The product manager actually can talk to the customer directly. So for example, if you are in the main retail industry, sorry, the department, like the online sales, and then they will able to talk to the customer services, be able to contact the customer directly to understand their issues and problems. And at that time, we were working on a Kindle Fire devices. We were able to, communicate with some of the customers that use the devices, the readers, and this group of people, and we try to understand their needs, their requirements. And once we have those, we internally from development team, we decide a requirement, but every single requirement we decide had to be based on that customer. Okay. The reason we're trying to do this is not only trying to fill up that gap between the communication, because we want to listen to the customer directly, understand what they need, but more importantly, we want to understand a more fundamental thing is because we know sometimes customers don't know what they want to build. So we never expect a customer to tell us, oh, I want to have this app has three screens. Please make a home screen to show this dashboard, and the second screen to show a list view, and the third screen to show me a profile page. Customer, for them, most of the time, they can't give you that kind of requirements because that's too technical. But that's supposed to be a development job. So as we talk to the customer, we got to understand their fundamental issues or fundamental problems, and then we got to think about how do we solve that problem using software technologies. Okay. So that whole process, it sounds very simple. Okay. But if you really capture the key here, it really helps you to avoid some of the issues I showed earlier in that graph. Okay, so that's basically what's going on today in the software industry in terms of requirement analysis. All I'm trying to say is that it doesn't follow a very formal procedure to do all of this documentation, but a very important piece is that they do talk to customers, they get the first-hand requirements, they look at the fundamental causes and issues and problems. Okay, now back to the topic today, what I want to share with you is that since I told you every team right now, you need to start to think and decide the project idea. Okay, since this is the only project you're going to do for this course, and very likely this is probably the most important project you ever do for your undergrad here if you're already senior here. Okay, I'm not saying this project is more important than other subject, but I can guarantee this project can bring you more value on your resume. That I'm pretty sure. At the end, you will see how. Okay, so I want you to decide this topic or problem very seriously, and it shouldn't be an easy, so like a discussion and an easy decision you make. Okay, you guys need to talk to each other, to discuss, and then to fund the best project. Okay, but because you're not going to do that many projects in the rest of your college life. Okay, so I told you you can do any kind of a topic or idea, but every team need to answer this question. Does your project solve a concrete problem? What is that problem? Does that problem really exist? Okay, as long as you can convince yourself, okay, this solves a very concrete, real problem for the real world, I think that will be a very good um, project topic. Okay, to summarize, when you decide your topic, it's all about problem solving. Okay, nothing new. I'm sure everyone heard about this one before, but to get this right is much more difficult than you ever saw. Okay, you're gonna make this decision very quick, very carefully. Let me show you different examples. I'm gonna start from this startup example I personally involved. I briefly talked about this one last week. Okay, about 15 years ago, we're working on this AR project that does this camera recognize object, pop up information on it. Here's a quick demo on how the technology works.
Cars today can do anything you want, except help you out at this moment. But this is all the help you need. And it can even make this into less of a mystery. Yeah, you always knew you were a car guy.
All right, hopefully you got the idea. Okay, so this one just shows how you can apply the technology. You get up in the morning, you want to jumpstart your car. It's not very difficult, but if you haven't done that for a while, you forgot how to do it. Now, what you can do, you can Google search it. You can go to YouTube search it. I'm sure you can find the answer pretty quickly. But instead, you can also take a picture, look at the engine. We recognize the model of the engine. We figure out the port, and then we show all this information directly on top of the port. I just gave you a much better experience of retrieving the information. Okay, that's what the technology is trying to do. But then the technical part is that we build an AR algorithm that we can recognize the object, we can figure out all the parts, and then we can render all these overlays. Okay, so the first time I saw this demo was back in 2011, 2012. I was working in Amazon for full time, and I saw this one. I was very impressed because this one does involve a lot of computer vision algorithms. Pretty complicated. I didn't know how to do it. I saw the demo, it looks really good, so I decided to join them. I quit job in Amazon and I basically went to work for the startup together with one of my professors. Okay. After that, we delivered a lot more demos. We had work with like a construction field. Okay, like here in the middle, that in the construction field, you need to manage a lot of the documents, design document, graphs, report, status report. So it used to be all the paper based, and then obviously nowadays they go to digital. But it's very hard to search. So if I'm walking to the site, I want to check the status here. All I need to do is take a picture of the part of the building, and then we recognize the parts, and then we pop up all the relevant documents directly on the photo. Once again, give you a better experience of retrieving the information. So you can think about any other use cases, but the technology is the same. So we gave you the object recognition, overlay rendering technique that you can apply in practice. So this was the office we had back in 2012. Okay, it was in Nashville, Tennessee. It was in a pretty basic office, but it's a big field. They basically put all the whiteboard there. You can see they wrote all the different things, and was 2012. This was the election. I think that was Romney with Obama. Okay, at that time. So, but yeah, pretty cool settings. The startup, this company actually, we had a very good start at that time. Okay, so and we got some fundings. That's how I decided to join them. But otherwise, I'm not going to risk myself from the Amazon job. And same for you guys. If one day your friend asks you to do a startup, okay, the first thing you're going to ask is, do you have fundings? Okay, you pretty much don't want to work for free unless it's a Elon Musk or someone who had successfully built or sold startups. Okay, otherwise don't go for it. Okay, it's not worth the risk. Okay, because if you got a funding, that means that the investors they're convinced. Okay, you got to trust the investor. They may not know the domain very well, but they got enough business experience to be able to convince themselves to put the money on it. When there's money involved, everything becomes more professional, more serious. Okay, there will be responsibility because when the moment is the investor put money on your company, they're gonna expecting to see growth. They're gonna call you frequently to check out the progress, and then you gotta answer the call, give them good updates, right? So everything will become more serious. So and also when the company has funding, that means that you can get paid more likely. Okay, so it's all positive. But if some of your friends, especially very young, who haven't done startup before, they got idea, they ask you to join to do together, no funding. I mean, it's not the best option. You should try to go to the big companies first to build that experiences, to get that branding from the big company, and obviously make more money and also experiences. Okay, so but anyway, at that time they got a little bit over $1 million from a venture capital in Boston, and I look at that one, it's great, and I actually got a little bit higher salary than Amazon, so I decided to join them. So the company started very well, and we also got some very good awards. Everyone knows about CES. CES is more about hardware devices stuff, but they also have some kind of software demonstrations, software categories. So they have some kind of competition. I don't know if they still have it, but back in 2013, we won one of the like category called a mobile software, something like this. We were like the winner for that category for just based on the AR project. It was a very big award. It's not some award that you buy it. Sometimes you can buy certain awards. I don't know if you know this. A lot of these events, they just create a lot of this award. It sounds really good, and all you need to pay for it, and you can get it. But this was not how we bought it. They just look at the project and then they give the winners. Then there is another event called South by Southwest. This is more popular in the South. It's held in Austin, Texas every year in March. And it's a very big event for startups and also for movies and music. But they have this accelerator program. Basically, it's a competition that we were also the top like finalists that go there to pitch the project. Okay, so anyway, so the company was founded in November or October 2012, and then in early 2013, we already achieved a lot of these good results. Very confident. So we saw that the company is going to take off. We're going to be very successful. That's how I decided to join because I also know that the technology we're building here is exceptional. Okay, it's very difficult. Still today, it's still very difficult. Not many people can do it. However, the short story is that the company didn't work out. Okay, it only took us 1 year to spend that $1.1 million. And at the end of the 2000, I think it's 13, and the investor, when they called us, and I actually also got a call, and then the investor was very polite and to say, well, we know you guys all put all the hard work, but we have decided that from January 2014, we're going to stop putting more money to this company and we're gonna basically drop this project. However, you guys feel free to do whatever you want to do. If you guys want to keep working on it, go for it. We don't own anything, and all the software, the code, you guys feel free to take and move forward. But we're just not gonna be getting involved. It was a very cool call. Well, first of all, the investors, I think the guy was very nice, very polite. And then the thing that surprised me most was that um, when they decide to quit, they don't take any portion of it. Because the moment they put the money on it, they have equity. Well, a certain percent of equity they own, but they don't need those. They don't need a call. They don't need anything. You guys decide if you want to keep running, go for it. They don't care. They're very cool. But later on, I realized that for this kind of early stage startup or investors, they put money into 20 to 30 companies every single year. And then they are very clear that most of these companies will be dead. But they don't care. All they care is two or three of those can survive, go to the next level, and that's how they make money. Okay, so the startup field, the tech startup particularly, is very, very difficult to survive. Okay, think about the reason because in the digital world, okay, internet, mobile, all of this, it's very difficult to make money. Okay, most of the people, most things you start with free. You can't go there to ask people to put a credit card to charge it, right? Very difficult. That's why the risk is higher. But instead, if you open a restaurant, if you do a, boba shop, right? So that you're not gonna fail that badly, right? So at least you can start to sell something, unless your food it really sucks. So it's a little bit different. It's different. The risk is different. Okay, but for tech, it's extremely difficult. It's easy for you to build things, but it's hard for you to get paid or get revenue from the customers. Okay, that's the nature of the software. Okay, but I was just to say that the investors, that's how they do their work. Okay, so industry is very interesting. Okay, so we pretty much work on that one for 1 year, a little bit over 1 year, very short period of time. It didn't work out, not a big deal because we didn't lose anything. Okay, we got paid, and that's why I told you if you want to work for Starbucks, you must make sure you got a salary, okay? If you are not a founder, at least you're not going to lose anything. We do got a lot of good experience. That's why I can share some of those lessons with you guys here today. So some of the things I want to share is number one, I want you to understand what do we do, okay? So we got the money, we got the time, we got a team. What do we work on? Well, for that 1 year, we got to make sure everything moves fast. In the beginning, we spend a lot of time and efforts to polish the product, the technical stuff. We build the demos, build the algorithms to make sure everything works more professionally. So this is how the algorithm works. So if you want to recognize certain object, so we have a platform that allows you to build a model for that object, right? So you can take a picture of the model, and then we use the computer vision algorithm to form that 3D model based on those 2D pictures, just your regular phones. Okay, 15, 20 pictures from different angles, and you will be able to get that little we call it cloud point model that represent that object, but it's a 3D. So that technology is pretty cool. And then once we have it, you can then attach all the different overlays and information. We have a portal allows you to put any kind of content you decided. You can draw a little bit a square, and then you can indicate that's the door, that's the window, and that's the information I want to show. Once you have everything attached and the model is built, then the users can use their phone to take photos from different angles to get new photos. Whenever they got a new photo, we will send it to the engine. The engine will analyze um, the photo and try to figure out your viewpoint. And we have a very smart algorithm to know the distance between the camera and the object. We will know the angle, so we kind of know where you're looking at. And once we know that, we'll draw and render all these overlays on top of the photo. Okay, so that's how the whole algorithm works. Pretty difficult. Okay, even today, still not many people can build it. So we spent a couple months trying to polish everything, so we're ready to move with the real customers, right? So now once we have that, the next half year or so, we spend most of the time working on the sales. Okay, because for startups on the day year one, it's so important, especially you got an investment. It's so important you're gonna show that you can generate some revenue. You don't have to make a profit. For tech industry, they don't expect you to make a profit quickly because it's difficult. Okay. But you gotta show at least you can sell something. At least people are willing to pay for it. That's so important. If you look at a lot of these companies when they go to IPO, like a couple of years ago, I think Rivian, right, the electrical car. If you look at their financials, they losing a lot of money, but still they go to IPO because people believe that they're just selling a smaller amount of cars because their capacity. But if you can increase the capacity, they will be able to make money. So people have a hope on them. Okay, but at least they show that their car can be made. People are willing to buy even a small amount of cars. So that's more important. Profit, we can wait. So same thing here. So we want to show to the investors that we can actually sell this. Customers are willing to use. So what we did at that time was that we focused on the business partners instead of direct consumers. Because at that time, I showed you all the different use cases. We can do construction, we can do like houses, we can do retail, we can work with every field. But we don't know how do we start from scratch, right? So that's why we talked to the companies first, and we were hoping these companies can start to use the technology to build things on for their business. So what we did was that we tried to set up a lot of the meetings and calls with all the different partners or potential customers. Okay, so it's not very hard to get a connection with them because through the investors, it's pretty straightforward to get someone to talk to. We set up a call and we ran the demos. We actually had a lot of good demos. That was just one of them. Depending on the industry, sometimes we make very customized demos for the specific customers. For example, we talked to the Home Depot. I would go to the Home Depot, actually look at their shelves, and I will recognize some of the product or model that one that will show them the next day. Yeah, we did a lot of very interesting demo. I'll show that later. And then after the demo, we're trying to discuss the business. Hopefully they can use it, get a deal, right? So that's our plan. But I was in most of these business meetings at that time. I realized that most of the meeting didn't work very well. Okay, at the end, instead of talking about deals and businesses, we end up with a lot of discussions. Okay, having discussion is not a bad thing, but we actually find the discussions were not very effective. Most of the time, this is people's response. Okay, they're saying that wow, this technology is so cool. Okay, we never seen before. Very, very difficult. Even today, I showed you this one. You're still gonna think the same way because it's not like simple app or web application. This one does involve pretty sophisticated algorithms. How do you guys make it? So that's great. But I need to think about how can I apply this in our company, in our domain. Okay, but obviously that's the question we're looking for, right? So we have our business guys. We have a business guy from like Harvard MBA, from West Point. I remember there's one guy, but they're very talented. Okay, so they prepare a lot of use cases. They prepare a lot of examples. They're gonna tell you, oh, you can try this and that. For example, we talked to Facebook many years ago we're suggesting, well, you guys have this news feed, the timeline. People open their page directly when they log in, and there are a lot of images people are uploading. So what if we use our API to let you to augment those photos, and maybe they can find something interesting from the photo? And that's the idea we're suggesting. But it was rejected by the director. The director said, well, that's not gonna happen because we're gonna make sure our timeline view is really fast. The performance, the latency is so important. We don't want to afford any kind of a delay. If this one call and wait for a few seconds to get results back, it's gonna really slow down the user experience. We're not gonna be able to do that. So that's just one example. So we pitch something and they don't think that's a very good idea. And that happens so many times. So I actually find that our business guys really didn't get that key point the customers are looking. Or sometimes the customer don't even know what they want. So we kind of stuck there for many meetings. We run at least 40, 50 different meetings with all the major companies you can ever think about from all different domains, tech industry, retail, hospital, construction, some of the what are some of the special ones like the some of the like art, music, everything you can think about. It was a very interesting experience to talk to different people. At that time, we did travel a lot to actually go to their office to see, but it wasn't effective. So this example probably is better, okay, for me to explain how big the gap is. There was one time we were trying to talk to Target. And so Target, they had a headquarters is in I forgot, it's in Michigan or Wisconsin, somewhere there, that area. Okay, I can't remember. We actually had our students actually working there, but then their tech and development research centers are all in the Bay Area in the West Coast. So we flew there and we're trying to demo this technology. And then they sent us to a Target store. The store is near the airport in San Francisco. You probably pass that one if you go to the west. That store is very special because it's a real store, but that store is used by the company as a lot of to do a lot of experiments. Whether it's a software updates or just a retail store setup, different they testing different things. You just don't know it. So I went there. I actually did a lot of modeling for their product. So on the next day, we were meeting in the store. I holding my phone. I was trying to take a picture of some of the product, and then I show them, look, you can actually recognize. We can recognize the product. We can then show you anything you want. You want to show a logo. You want to show a link. Maybe you click on the link, open the product page. You want to show the reviews. Whatever you want to show, we can link those. But the key thing we can provide is that we can recognize what that is. Again, we can give you all the overlays. And then the guy said, well, yeah, it looks pretty cool, but again, we're probably not going to use this one because it's not very useful. So he actually explained to me that because they have done a lot of customer studies and experiments, they said a very big problem customers are facing is that they feel they don't feel that the shopping experience is very efficient. In other words, the customers always want to get things they want quickly and get the checkout done quickly and get out of the store quickly. That's why, if you go to the Target, actually they do a lot more like a checkout line. They do all the self-checking all the machines, all of those. None of us like to stay, waiting for the line for the checkout. That's definitely the part we don't like. So if you understand that one, he said that very rarely people would like to spend a lot of time inside the store to look for details, to make some decisions and think about this one this carefully. It doesn't work that way. Maybe there's a small group of people who want to do that, but the majority of shoppers want to find things quickly, get it quickly, and then pay and go. So why do they need to spend some time there to take a photo, wait for a few seconds, get the results, and look at this? It just doesn't sound practical. He said even if they want to look at this information, there are better ways. They can scan the QR, like the barcode, and it can just look at the product more quickly. Why do we need to bother to take a picture and wait for this fancy animation to show up? It doesn't work. So he rejected the idea. And then we were very frustrated because that's the only thing we've been preparing for. And we don't know what else we can do. But then luckily, this guy told us a better situation. And he said, well, maybe this is something you can help. So he started explaining this use case. He said, because the customer want to get the things and finish their shopping quickly, then one step that affects their decision was if you have too many choices for a certain product, then they will need to spend time to think about and they want to make the best decision. Um, so he said, well, if you have this many product, are we able to use our technology to be able to help them to filter different things? And then he gave us a very concrete example in the cereal section. So in every Target store, you can see there has to be one aisle with two sets of shelves with all the cereal boxes, over 100 different brands. I'm sure some of you probably have your favorite brands, but if you don't buy this very often, you go there, you got lost. You don't know what to buy. It's all that is very fancy, very similar packaging. So he said, could you actually allow your technology to take a picture and recognize, instead of individual product, you recognize multiple product and then tell the customers where they are they. For example, if you want to find out this good reviews, you click on the button, you can filter those. And that part give you the offers. And then the first one give you the gluten-free cereal boxes. If you can do this one, that really helps customers to make their shopping decisions. And they'll be more confident that they make the right decision. That will save their time and that solve their problem. And the customers are willing to use. And then we heard about this one and we think this one makes perfect sense, right? If I don't show you this one, you might think this is actually a pretty good idea. But the guy you start to explain, you realize this, yeah, it's just not a good. But if you compare that one with this one, obviously this idea is so much better. Okay, it makes perfect sense. Problem, solution, and that's exactly how our technology can help with. So if you look at these two use cases, the first one is pitched by us, and this one is needed by the actual customer. If ever been in a meeting, you go there, you prepare this type of ideas, you can imagine how the sales will be. Okay, it's not going to be very good. It's not just for one meeting. We've done a lot of meetings, and most of those are like this. However, I'll tell you, like coming at something like this is very difficult because this is not our field. We don't know the retails. We never done the customer study. How do we ever know this is a problem the customer is facing? Almost impossible. Unless you have someone who worked in the industry for a long time, you've done research. So it was very difficult for us to come up with something like this. I'll give you more example. This is also one of the fun trip we did to Boston. So Dunkin' Donuts is more popular in the East Coast. Now here we see more Starbucks, but they're big competitors. Their headquarters is in Boston. So the investor also in Boston, so they know each other very well. So it was very easy to set up a meeting. Again, we go to the actual headquarters to show this demo. And then in the Dunkin' Donuts, in their third floor of their headquarters building, they have all this like a stores. It's one purpose is to test a new product, to simulate different things, to showcase different things. And obviously those are real like counters and stores. Okay, so the whole store third floor is all for free. You can drink and eat anything you want. So we went there. The idea we pitched was the TV display. So we model the TV, the content here, and then we show the guy, see, you take a picture of the TV play, and we can give you more information. You guys have a lot of coupons. You don't know how to distribute those. People don't know where to find those. Well, you can pop up those from the phone. So that way people will use more of your apps. And then you can click on one of the product. We can show you the reviews of sandwiches and coffees. Or at that time, we propose, well, if you want to do a mobile order, you can then we'll pop up you a button, then you can click on the button to make an order. Then we were very excited to show this one. I was the one that demonstrated all of this in a live demo. It was a very cool demo. And then the guy saw it in the same response. It's a very cool demo. But I don't think this is very useful. Well, this is coffees and sandwiches. Why people would like to see the reviews for coffees and sandwiches? And then also he said that the mobile order, that makes more sense if you are getting to the store ahead of time. Like that's how we use Starbucks app. But if you're already in the store, you're already in the line, why do you still need to bother to make a mobile order? Or if you do want to make a mobile order, why do you need to bother to take a picture of a TV and then wait for the button to show up and then do the button? Why don't you just open the app and just do it, right? Yeah, it sounds very stupid, but honestly, these are the real cases we proposed, and it was not just my idea, it was our business guy's idea, the Harvard MBA's idea. Okay, we pitched this one very seriously. We did a lot of preparation. Okay, but pretty poor demos, honestly, especially now when I look at back. All right. Um, once again, we're very lucky. The guy told us, okay, could you guys do something like this? I think this one may be something more useful. So he started to explain that the Dunkin' Donuts is based on the franchise model. I don't know how much you know it. Starbucks is like they own every store, most of the store. Okay, so every store they set up the location, they hire people, they manage everything, they set up things owned and managed by the Starbucks headquarters itself. The Dunkin' Donuts doesn't own those stores; they franchise. Okay, so you can open a Dunkin' Donuts store if you want. You get a location, you pay some fees, and they give you all the supplies. Obviously, you have to split the revenue with them. That's their business model. So he said that there is a very big problem. How do we make sure all the stores, at that time they have over 7,000 stores, how do we make sure all the stores following the rules, the designs, everything we set up? And one of the example was that in each store, you have to place this, shelves to sell the different products. They have very specific designs for those. Okay, so they would design this thing called a planogram, and then they send it to the 7,000 stores. So every store is supposed to follow this. Okay, but they said I have no idea how well the stores are following this, or not. Okay, so that was the problem. So could you guys build something that allows people to take a picture of all the shelves? Okay, and then you can recognize what the products are, and also tell us if it's right or wrong. Okay. If you can do that, that will help us so much. And once again, compare this use case and the one we pitched about the TV manual display. And obviously, this is another like 100 times better than the other idea. All right. We actually delivered this project. This one is a very difficult demo we did. Okay, we ran a lot of setup, but it actually went pretty well. So we set up this kind of a shelf. As you can see, that's for the Target example. We bought a lot of cereal boxes. And so we model it, we take a picture. You can see we can recognize every single product on the shelf. So this is our reference model. So the green boxes means that it's just correct. So you click on the box and it will pop out the product information. So all the information had been processed, had been stored and attached to the models at the first place. Okay. And then after that, you start to mess up the shelf. Whether it's wrong location, you're missing something, it's like a wrong angle, all of this, and then you take a picture again. Now you will see those incorrect spots has been identified with the red boxes, and then you click on it, it will tell you what's wrong, what's the right item to put. Okay, so this was a live demo recorded from an iPad, and then even better demo is that you will see the next picture we take, we actually step back a little bit. Okay, we stand further. You can see all those objects become smaller, but we can still recognize those. And you can see we can still draw those boxes very precisely on those boxes. So when the object becomes smaller, the overlays also become smaller. Okay, it's not like a fixed thing. So that was really the core part of the technology. And the way you can do it, you got to figure out the distance, the angle, the viewpoint, the object, which object is showing up, and then you draw the boxes. So that was a pretty cool demo. All right. So, but the idea is coming from their directors. It's a very good idea, but unfortunately, it's almost impossible for us to figure out something like this. Okay, because we're never running a franchise business, so we can't imagine they need something like this. All right, so that was the problem we're facing as we run this startup. So we got the technology ready, but when we went to the sales, all of a sudden we stuck there. It was very difficult for us to come up with the right ideas and right pitches. Okay. So that's kind of the point I was trying let you know to understand. Okay, so I was reading the question. Okay, you got a project, you have this cool technology, all right, but really think about what is the problem you're trying to solve, and you gotta really make efforts to think very deeply and guarantee this is actually a real problem. Like when we walked to the Target store, we were so convinced that the problem was that the customers they need to find the information because we haven't seen their apps. Their apps have all the regular apps that you can find and search the product. We believe our technology can give you a better experience of retrieving this information. We went to the Dunkin', we saw the same way, but obviously that was not a real problem. Okay, so this question is harder to figure it out than you thought. As you guys decide this with your team, really think about this carefully. Okay. Um, there could be mistakes here. Uh, Also, you need to think about the reason we actually made those mistakes is because we were so involved in the technology because every day we're trying to build the technology, improve the algorithm, how to do the model, how do we attach the content. Every day we're thinking about is the technology itself. So as we come up with the use cases and then designs, we often directly map our technology to the use case because we can model, we can show the content. So that's why we model the product, we model the TV menu display. But you see, the use case is slightly different. And they want you to model the whole shelf, but they want you to do more comparison. But that's what not what technology was originally built for. So that's why we actually come up with everything really based on the technology, where those business people come up with everything is purely from their business requirements. Okay, that's why a lot of gaps shows up. Okay, so anyway, so these are the lessons I really learned from that first company. The first company still, I really appreciate all this technology we built. This was a lot of complicated things we done on computer vision, extract features and map the features, and then eventually form the model. It was a very difficult part to do. It's still today, it's still very difficult. Okay. However, none of this matter. Okay. So you always need to think about, is this something just very cool or something very useful? Okay, very simple question, but a lot of time people tend to make mistakes. That's another lesson for you. Okay, if you ever think about startups, one day your friend also showed you something similar, or has this cool idea, or even they build a very cool demo. And because we are CS people, we understand technology. You can pretty much tell if this is easy or not. If you see this is not easy, well, obviously that's a good thing. But at the same time, it may also be some risks. Okay, you gotta check and ask yourself, is this really that useful? Where are gonna use this one? Who is gonna willing to use this one? Think this question very carefully. 15 years ago, I had zero experience on startup. All I saw was that technology was so cool. I know that nobody else can do it. And then that's the only reason I joined. I never thought of anything about a business. I didn't even care about how they're going to make money. I just care about, well, this is a very cool program. I want to learn this. I want to do this one with them together. But to make a startup more successful, it's a lot more than just writing the code. Okay. So anyway, a lot of a lesson learned from the first startup. Let me also show you a more successful startup. The reason I can talk about this one was because this company, we share the same office, share the same investor. So that's why they put us together. The company was called Optio Labs, was also an early startup. They invested. They had a very similar beginning. They got a little bit over $1.5 million in the seed funding, and then they set up a team. But this company went a lot more successful. After 1.5 years, they actually raised the A round of funding, which is $10 million. Okay. When they raise that much money, their valuation of the company is higher. Like I told you last week, that you invest something, for example, you take 10% of the company, that means your company worth $100 million. So the investors are making money by this because whenever they got this, the valuation got higher. That means the company the investor own like worth more. Okay. After the raising, they moved to the new office. I got a new logo, all the snack stuff, a lot better. Okay. So once you have money, this is gonna easier. So a little bit background about what they do. Okay. So I briefly mentioned about this also last week. They do the cybersecurity stuff, specifically for mobile cybersecurity. Their main product was that they built their own customized Android operating system because Android is open source, so you can change it. You guys can also get a code and then modify it, change the logo, everything you want. But it's a very giant code base. So they build their own Android version that allows people to customize the Android, especially for the security control. For example, you can remotely set some rules or policies to say that um, on the weekdays you can't really send text messages, or if you are in certain geolocations, you cannot use Wi-Fi or internet. Okay, something like this. So the customers are mostly government and military, where they need to manage how their staff members are using the phones. Okay, so that was the product. So you can see also very useful. So they sold this product to one of the government agencies. Okay, it was a pretty big deal. I think it was about $1 or $2 million a contract. Okay, pretty good one. And just with that one sale, and they start raising money, they increase the valuation, and a lot more investors are willing to put the money on it. That's how the $10 million raising happened. So you have to show that you can generate revenue. For high-tech companies, normally they do the valuation based on the revenue or based on the profit. Most time based on revenue. For example, this year we made $2 million based on this sale, right? And then when we value your company, since this is the high tech, we tend to give you more like factors. Normally times 6, 8, 10, something, 20, 40. If you do AI, I think that factor is going to be very high. If you make $1 million, people are going to value your company maybe $40 million. That's pretty common. But then if you do a restaurant, they're not going to value that much because restaurant they don't see much like a potential. You're gonna basically only gonna make money by how many number of tables and people you can serve. That's always limited for one store. But technology, it's a bigger space. Um, but anyway, so they made one sale, so that's why they were more successful. Not necessarily you have to make profit. It doesn't matter. The investor don't care about the profit. They just care about you get net valuation, eventually good IPO, because the investor can make more money at that time. Okay. So this is a better startup. At that time, I was asking and talking to one of the founders. I was asking him, well, this is a very cool idea. How did you actually come up with this idea? Because of cybersecurity, because I know that professor wasn't working on the cybersecurity field before. And then he started explaining to me, well, I didn't get this idea until one day I went to DC. This is just a fake picture, just to show in the DC there were a lot of research meetings. And then he went there and they were talking about the trend for the next years in terms of research, what the government want to have, right? And they specifically talk about the mobile security. This one happened around 2010, 2011, when, as I mentioned earlier, the like iPhone got very popular, smartphones got popular, and everyone started switching the phones to smartphone. That happened around 2010 to 2012. Okay, the first iPhone came in 2007, but the first three generation, very, very few people were using iPhone. Okay, it's expensive. It was bonded to AT&T only, and most people don't use iPhone, smartphone. But once they have the iPhone 4 and 4S around 2010 and 11, it getting really good. And at that time, there were also a lot of Android options. So that's when most people started to switch. So the government saw that, and then they realized the next big threat coming from cybersecurity will be on the mobile end. So that's why they proposed a lot of mobile related project. And then the professor saw that that's where they can get funding. So he actually went back, started to investigate and do the research on mobile security. That's how they come up with these ideas. Okay, so that idea wasn't created on the fly by himself. He just attend meetings, heard the needs, understand the situation. He designed the product. Okay, so that's the story for the second company. Okay. And then he told me that one day he did some research, he got a paper published, and he got a call from this investor from Boston. It's a cold call. Just ask him if he want to set up a meeting to chat more about setting up a company. And the professor was very excited and set up a company. And then they create a product. Eventually, they sold back to the government. Okay. So hopefully, guys, by showing these two examples, you can see there are two different paths as you work on the startups. I will talk about the second one more time. So the professor had no idea on what to do. He went to the capital and heard about this idea from the government who knows the current situation from the government, from national security point of view. And the government told all the researchers, these are things what we need for the coming years. Please start work on this if you can. And the professor got the idea, went back to do the research, come up with a project. And the investor also know the trends. The investor put together a company, they build a product. When they start to sell, they sold it back to the government because the government already said many years ago, we want this, build it. And now here's the thing, yeah, of course we'll buy it. So that was the path for the second company. The first company is very different. The first company is that some of these professors, they were doing the computer vision research. So they're pretty good at these algorithms. And then they work on this algorithm. They figure out this whole AR concept was very early and it works pretty well. And because nobody really else can do this. So they talk to the investor, see, this one is very competitive. Do you want to invest and put together a company? And then somehow they convince the investors. So they form a company. And once the company is done, we want to figure out the sales and try to sell it. And we don't know where to sell it. Well, but let's just try to talk to as many people as we can. That's what happened with the things I just shared. We started try to explore every single field, try to find out a good use case to fit into this technology. But it turned out this path was so difficult. I already told you that it wasn't because we didn't work hard. We worked very hard. It also wasn't because the MBAs was not talented. It was just very hard. If you never work on this domain, if you don't know this too much about this company, how would you know where the problem are? Almost impossible. Okay, so that's why if you go this path, uh, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be successful. Okay, it's where you get things started. It's starting from a technology or it starts from a problem. Okay, obviously you want to go with a problem path because that will make the rest of your journey so much more easier. Okay, that's so important, guys. This one I just cut it somewhere from online. I think this is coming from some of the business school, some of the business lectures. Nothing we talk about today is difficult, so easy to understand, but I just want to use a real example to convince you that these things are pretty hard to get right. Especially, I have to tell you, as a CS major, okay, it's we tend to make more mistakes on this. Okay, the right way to go with a successful business is that you start from problem and then you come up with a solution. The solution might use some technology, and then you start to make a profit. Okay, you do not want to start from technology. So what does that mean? So I have some students every summer after the summer came back to my office to say, oh, in the summer I actually learned something new. Many years ago, student may tell me, oh, I learned Angular JS, for example. Angular came like 10 years ago. It was a pretty new framework. And then later on, student told me, oh, I actually learned, for example, what else? Yeah, deep learning, neural networks. I took this online course. It's pretty cool. And then recently students already started telling me, oh, I've been playing around with AI, vibe coding, all this API stuff. Okay, so different years, students tell me different things. Very good. And then sometimes students will say, this semester I'm gonna use AngularJS to make a project. I'm gonna make a web application. This semester I'm gonna use the neural network and deep learning to train some model to make a very cool project. Okay, so this is called that you make a project starting from a technology. Because I just learned this one, I know this one, and obviously not many people know Angular, not many people know how to train a model. I know it, so I have some advantage. So I want to use that talent and skill to do something, to make a project, without thinking about anything on why I'm making this one, who's going to use this one, why they're going to buy this. Okay. Now you might be arguing, okay, yeah, of course, well, this is just a personal project. We just want to learn here. Um, the reality is that when you start to think about project or when you do the startup, you will still follow the similar mindset. It's not just about learning, guys. So this is something I gotta remind you because I feel I was thinking in the exact same way many years ago. Because we are so obsessed by the technology. We like coding, right? Whenever you see some new stuff, new library, cool demos. If you like hands-on stuff, you might want to try that very quickly. And then very immediately, you're going to think about what can I build with it? Okay, that's the engineer's mindset. Nothing wrong with it, but this kind of mindset is very bad for you to run a business because you often get the wrong point in the very beginning. Also, by comparison, I can let you know the students from business majors, they never think about this way. Okay. The reason is very simple because they know nothing about technology. They know nothing about how to build it. 5 years ago, nowadays it's less. Okay. 5 years ago, every week, the students coming from business department came to my office hour and asked me, Professor, I have this idea. I want to build this app. Could you actually find me a CS student who want to do this one, join this one with me? I can give them some equity and shares, all of this. You know, the business guys, the business students, they often talk that way. I'll be very honest. I really don't like that kind of conversation. I didn't say this one, but in my mind, if I can build the app, why do I need you, right? Why do I need to work for you? Because I know how to make the app. I know how to write the code, right? All these guys came here to pitch all different ideas. All they're asking is for me to find some of the CS student to work with them. And at that time, I really don't think business is anything valuable. Okay. But honestly, now I changed a lot of my mind. You have to admit that if you can see the right direction and right problem, if you done enough analysis about the market, everything, if you can get those right, it's not really easy. Writing code is cool, but it's not the most difficult part of a product or business. So the business people also has a lot of their own values. Okay, so hopefully just by this example, you need at least to know that anytime when you start a project, okay, whether it's just a startup or your personal project, start from the problem first, okay? That will give you a much better chance of making the problem good. Not necessarily always on startup, even like your personal project. Since you're gonna put time anyway, okay? Since it's gonna last a semester anyway, why don't you think bigger? Okay. Why don't you think about, okay, this project maybe can bring some value, maybe can become a startup. But if you want to do that, you got to come back to this problem first. Okay, think that very carefully. So I just want to remind you with the STEM or engineering mindset, sometimes we forgot about that one. We mentally we don't think that's a very big deal because we think this is easy. We think coding is more difficult. That is true, but if you don't get the first thing right, the coding is useless. Okay, so that's the first half I want to share since the time is up. Okay, I'll share more examples, especially the example from our students next time. Okay, but again, nothing difficult, but hopefully you got a point. You know, you start to brainstorm some problem issues and chat with your team. Okay.